Some mornings start with a cup of coffee, others start with a crime scene that changed your life forever. Resident Evil Requiem opens with FBI analyst Grace Ashcroft arriving at a location tied to the worst moment of her past. The place where her mother was murdered. Not exactly the ideal setting for a calm workday, but Grace is good at her job, and her superiors believe facing the past might help her move forward. Terrible idea, but still, it's in the script. Unfortunately for Grace, this is Resident Evil, and in this universe, yeah, you guys already guess it, closure usually comes with monsters, blood, and unattached limbs. Things spiral out of control quickly. Grace gets kidnapped and dragged into a conspiracy far bigger than a routine investigation. Somewhere within that chaos, she crosses paths with a man who has seen more biohazards than most men have had hot dinners. Leon S. Kennedy. Leon is no rookie anymore, of course, most of you will know about this. The once inexperienced officer from Resident Evil 2 has grown into a seasoned DSO agent who spends his day dealing with bioterrorism threats around the world. When a series of strange dads begins raising red flags, Leon starts digging for answers, and eventually runs into Grace in the middle of a situation that is rapidly becoming a nightmare. And as expected, the nightmare has teeth. The story unfolds like a big-budget thriller, packed with tense moments, dramatic confrontations, and just the right amount of Resident Evil-style cheesiness. Characters trade the occasional over-the-top line, but beneath that familiar charm, there's genuine development happening. Both Grace and Leon evolve throughout the journey, pushed forward by events that rarely give them time to breathe. The villains also play a very strong role here. They're strange, unsettling, and often unpredictable. Exactly the kind of antagonists that keep the Resident Evil formula entertaining. It may not always be subtle storytelling, but it is consistently engaging. The narrative moves forward with enough twists to keep you curious about what comes next. And visually, well, the game is just looks phenomenal. Resident Evil Requiem runs on Capcom's RE engine, which by this point almost feels like a cheat code to me. Environments shift between wide detailed locations and tight claustrophobic interiors where every shadow feels kinda suspicious. The lighting, character models, and environmental detail create a world that feels both grounded and slightly exaggerated in that unmistakable Resident Evil style. It's the kind of presentation that makes it easy to get lost in the atmosphere. And thankfully, the performance keeps up really well. Even during intense moments filled with enemies and effects, the game maintains strong resolution and smooth performance. Well, let's talk about gameplay now, because this is where Requiem really shows its ambition. The game features a dual protagonist system, meaning you play both as Grace and Leon, and their gameplay styles couldn't be more different. Grace represents the survival horror side of Resident Evil. She's trained, sure, I guess, I don't know. At the beginning of the game she meets like a police officer and shows her FBI badge, and the officer is like, what the fuck, are you from the FBI? I wouldn't have believed her for anything, but still, of course, she's from the FBI. She's a pussy, but she's from the FBI. And her FBI background means she's not helpless. But she's vulnerable, let's keep it at that. Ammunition is scarce, healing items are even scarcer in the game, and every hallway, if you're playing with Grace, feels like it might contain something unpleasant. It's Resident Evil, okay, but it's extra unpleasant. When you control Grace, the game leans heavily into classic survival horror design. You move cautiously, searching drawers and cabinets for resources, while of course hoping nothing hears you rummaging around. Sometimes the smartest move is simply to avoid confrontation entirely. And yes, zombies are still a major problem in this game. Normally, zombies in games have become so common that they barely raise an eyebrow anymore. But Requiem tries to make them interesting again. These infected creatures often retain fragments of their former routines, which leads to unusual behaviors. A janitor might still obsessively clean a specific area. A cook may wander the kitchen like he's preparing a meal that will never be served. That's really scary though. And a maintenance worker might still fiddle with the lights or equipment, like light on, light off, light on, light off, light on, light off. And you hear that through the hallways, and it's pretty scary. Eventually the game isn't that scary after all. Like I was expecting it to be a lot more scary than it eventually was. Like there weren't any crazy jump scares or whatsoever. So, okay, that's a good thing. You know, it's unsettling, but also clever. These behaviors that I was just talking about create patterns you can study and exploit, adding another layer to the gameplay. Grace also introduces a unique mechanic called blood crafting. Sounds really weird, but it's pretty cool. The infected blood found throughout the environment isn't just decoration, it's a resource. With it you can upgrade equipment or craft certain items from scratch. Of course, blood isn't unlimited, so every decision matters. Do you use it to eliminate a threat, improve an item, create healing supplies, or secure your progress? These choices add tension to almost every encounter. And when things do get messy, which they absolutely will, the game does not hold back on the gore. Blood splatters across the walls, floors, and ceilings with impressive detail, I gotta say. Entire rooms can just end up looking like the aftermath of a horror movie set. It's gruesome, yes, of course, but also strangely satisfying in that classic Resident Evil way, if you know what I mean. Another major threat comes in the form of dynamic stalker enemies. If you remember Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, scary motherfucker, you already understand the basic idea. But here they're smarter and more unpredictable. These monsters patrol areas, adapt to sounds you make, and can appear in places you weren't expecting. Drop something noisy and suddenly you're hiding under a desk while a nightmare searches the room for you. One of the most memorable creatures introduced in promotional material is a towering beast with goat-like legs, bulging eyes, and disturbingly human teeth. It moves through corridors and uses tunnel systems in walls and ceilings to track its prey. In other words, it cheats. It hears you, it smells you, and if it finds you, things get ugly fast. I'm not gonna spoil anything about other enemies, at least not too much, because of course you want to play this for the first time and you want to be scared as fuck, and get all the jump scares. There aren't many jump scares, but still scary moments. So I'm not spoiling, just to be telling you like halfway throughout the video. But still. But while Grace's X sections emphasize fear and caution, Leon's gameplay shifts the tone completely, like it's a completely different world if you play with him. Playing as Leon feels closer to the action-focused style seen in, well, Resident Evil 4, I guess. Combat becomes faster, heavier, and more aggressive. Leon is older now, pushing 50, and his movement reflects that. He is maybe slightly slower, not always, sometimes he's pretty fast, but he's a lot more powerful, at least it feels like it. And yes, he still delivers those wonderfully ridiculous one-liners and superhero landings, like unnecessary superhero landings.
I couldn't save them. But I can stop bastards like you.
His arsenal may not be massive, but each weapon feels impactful. Different versions of firearms can be unlocked, and Leon can upgrade them to increase their effectiveness against increasingly dangerous enemies. And I thought that was pretty cool, like the upgradable weapons and stuff. I liked it, the red dot sights and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty cool. He also brings some new tricks into the fight, by the way. Instead of relying purely on knives, Leon now carries a hatchet, which is really cool, the way you can kill enemies with it. It can be repaired and reused, making it a reliable melee option for blocking attacks or finishing off stunned enemies. And if enemies decide to throw objects at you, well, Leon can now return the favor. Spears, debris, whatever happens to be nearby, Leon isn't picky, he just picks it up, smashes it in their head, and he's like, fuck you there, fuck you. Catch the chair, I don't know. Once you get into a rhythm with his combat system, the experience becomes incredibly satisfying. I really enjoyed playing with him. It was really fun, and well, it wasn't scary anymore because he's like just a badass. You know, you start moving through enemies with the confidence of a seasoned action hero, turning chaotic encounters into controlled destruction, and you just blow through everything. The contrast between Grace and Leon works surprisingly well, at least if you ask me. After an hour of creeping through dark corridors with limited resources, switching to Leon and bulldozing through enemies feels incredibly rewarding. The two gameplay styles balance each other out, preventing the experience from becoming repetitive. And considering how many IDs the game introduces, multiple gameplay systems, different enemy types, exploration areas, stealth mechanics, crafting, and dynamic threats, it's impressive that everything still feels cohesive. Of course, no Resident Evil game would be complete without a few familiar quirks, you know. That's Resident Evil, and wouldn't be Resident Evil without those. The story occasionally stumbles in places, sometimes making narrative choices that feel a little questionable. Not terrible, just the kind of moments where you tilt your head slightly and think, yeah, that's definitely Resident Evil plot. Pacing can also feel a bit uneven on repeat playthroughs. Early sections receive more breathing room and than some of the other areas, you know. But honestly, These are small issues in an otherwise strong package. At its core, Resident Evil Requiem feels like a blockbuster, a roller coaster that constantly shifts between dread and adrenaline. One moment you're cautiously creeping through shadows with Grace, the next you're smashing through monsters with Leon like a veteran action star. You know, the game just respects the series' past while still experimenting with new mechanics and ideas. It expands the formula without losing the identity that made Resident Evil so iconic in the first place. By the time the credits roll, you've experienced a mix of horror, action, tension, and spectacle that rarely lets up. Resident Evil Requiem delivers intense gameplay, stunning visuals, memorable enemies, and enough variety to keep things exciting from beginning to end. A Requiem for the dead, a nightmare for the living, and for the fans of the series, an absolute thrill ride. I do recommend it. It's definitely a buy it for me. It's not too long. The overall length is like, I played it in like 11 hours, 11 and a half hours, something like that. Online it said it would take like 14 hours. I did it in 11, and I had a lot of fun. I checked every corner. I could have done a lot more, but I was just invested in the story. I wanted to continue, and I've had a lot of fun playing this game. So what do you think? Have you already played it? Are you going to play it? Did this video help you? Let me know. Maybe drop some likes and maybe subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. I do reviews for every game I play. It's not every game that gets released, but I do my best. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Wish you all the best. God bless you. See you next time.